AJ, you arrived just on time. I was just starting to record. And I think now you should be ready. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Auckland Connected System User Group, April 2021. So we're going to be talking about logic apps and testing today. A little bit about us. As you can see, that is really old because it says over 300 members. We actually over 500 members in 1 year. So that's quite interesting. We are organizing the Global Integration Bootcamp for a while, and most of you noted that this year it was a global virtual event instead of like mini events across the globe, but we'll try to come back to normal next year with like more people working together. The leadership team is Craig, that is currently probably just landed and running from the airport to here. Colin, that is joining us today. Myself, can you just admit? Yeah. Myself, Will, and Alessandro. Did I miss anyone? No. How can you help? So you can volunteer for a talk, just like Alessandro did. You can suggest some topics, so we can try to find people to talk about that. You can help your hand to raise your hand to help with organization. If you wanted, you can follow us on Twitter. We are on Twitter. We always mention ACSUG and Z. If you wanted to follow us there, you're going to find out when we put in new meetings. And every time that you finishing a presentation like that one, we put in the information on our new YouTube channel. So if you wanted to subscribe to the channel, go to bit.ly/ACSUG-channel, and you should be able to see us there and find out all the previous presentations. Today's show is going to be Logic Apps and Testing. It's a hybrid event and is presented by Mr. Moura, Senior Integration Consultant at Datacom. Got everything right there? Yes. Not sure if it was the right title. Tonight's event is brought to you by Microsoft. It's been a while since we have that. We're back on our old hunter grounds, but with not many people, right? But it would be good if you wanted to join our community. You should be tweeting your dev experience, so join on Microsoft.tech, at Microsoft Tech. And you should be able to join the newsletter to get regular updates about the community experts, some invites if you go to aka.ms/devnz. For the legends, we always do a little bit of what is different from that presentation from the other ones. And this time is the first in-person event since last year. And it's not our first attempt to hybrid event, but the last one was a disaster. So everyone crossing fingers and making sure that it's working fine. Without any further ado, and like knocking any kind of wood that I can find, I'll pass it on to Alessandro for him to start the presentation. No, because you're still on mute.
Now
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Let me share my screen. And let's go here. So I believe you can see my PowerPoint. Not the right one. How do I do this? Oh, it's working fine. Okay, perfect. So, yep, today's talk is going to be about integration testing with logic apps. So that's my intention here. So that's the first time that I'm going to do this presentation. I put this together. I started last week, so I had this idea for quite some time, but I put together a little bit of the slides last week, and I just finished the demos yesterday. So let's see how that goes. First of all, I'm very, very excited to be here again. One year without being here in the grounds is quite awesome to be able to be here. I know like people are getting more comfortable being at home, I guess, but you know this kind of setup is quite cool. Sorry. So is this kind of setup, being able to be in a place to do the networking, and of course eating some pizzas is quite awesome. So we are going to keep trying doing this. Hopefully next time I'm gonna see a little bit more of you guys, so we can share a little bit of our love about technology. So my name is Alessandro. I am working since last month. I joined Datacom, so I joined as a senior integration consultant. I was born in São Paulo, Brazil, moved to New Zealand 3.5 years ago. Amazing country to be, so no complaints so far. If maybe like some of you know, maybe some of you don't know, but I am a very huge fan of football team. The name is Sport Clube Corinthians Paulista. Of course, it's a Brazilian team. So maybe we are going to see some demos related to that somehow. So we have more guys joining. Hey. If you guys want to follow me, my Twitter handle is Alessandro Moura. If you want to see what I post in my blog, alessandromoura.com.br. It's a little bit like not much happening there lately, but I promise I'll be back posting some stuff. So the presentation is about how to do integration tests with Logic Apps. And for that, I just going to do like a first part about testing concepts, general knowledge about testing. Then I'm going to go right away to how I did the setup for do the proper integration tests with Visual Studio. I'm going to talk a little bit about other options because Logic Apps is a little bit limited in terms of testing availability for us. But I'm going to try to go a little bit with some other options. And of course, I'm going to go a demo to show the actual code working, the pipeline, and so on and so forth. So let's go. Let's start with software quality. So a very important aspect of doing software development is making sure that whatever we are developing have a good quality. So we need to make sure that the products that we put out there, they are kind of a fail-proof, right? So we don't want to have like software breaking on the hands of our customers. This has huge impacts for organizations. So I was just working in a bank until 2 months ago, and the amount of effort that these type of organizations they put on testing it's huge, and it makes a lot of sense because you see that the products we put out there, they have a very, very good quality. So it's really hard to find a failure showing up for the customer. Of course, problems happens by like lots of reasons, but having the proper software quality process in place is going to help to mitigate that as much as possible and have like the best quality possible. So if you want to deliver software with good quality, we need to look at how to make sure we are meeting the proper functional requirements. We need to also meet the non-functional requirements. So I need to make sure that whatever is the requirement from my client in terms of the functionalities, I need to deliver those functionalities, as well as stuff like what happens if a server breaks down? What happens if I have a huge spike in terms of load? So all of these we need to consider whenever we are thinking about doing software with good quality. For that to happen, we need to implement to do tests on the software we develop, and can be like many types of ways of us to do this type of tests, right? So We can do unit tests, we can do integration tests, functional, acceptance, regression, what else? Smoke, stress, performance. So lots of types of tests. Each one of them, they have a specific purpose to help us deliver the best quality in our software. My focus today is going to be on integration tests. I'm going to go a little bit further about that in Logic Apps, but Logic Apps is very hard to do unit tests. So it's really it's not a tool that right now it's prepared to do unit tests. I know that the product team, they're working to maybe improve this experience, but right now we need to do a little bit of workarounds to make that happen. So I'm just going to look in terms of the integration tests right now. Okay. Just a little bit like in terms of explanation about two types of tests, unit tests and integration tests. So for unit tests, we are looking for the very low level type of test. I'm testing the code itself. I test that particular method. So I want to pass a few parameters. I'm going to do the execution of whatever that method does. And I want to test what is the result of that operation. One thing that is important, whenever we are doing unit tests, we don't test the backend. So if my unit test is going to SAP, to Dynamics, to a database, it doesn't matter. We don't test that particular feature. It's not what we are trying to evaluate. We are just looking that logic, that if, that while, whatever I put in there, that particular pieces of code is working as I intended. So that's what I'm trying to do when I do unit tests. Normally, it's the cheapest way to automate. It's the quickest to run. So it's very, I guess, easier to work with unit tests. With Logic Apps, we don't have much, as I mentioned. There's a feature that is called static result that can enable us to do a little bit of that. I'm going to tell you later why that's not actually that useful in a real production scenario, right? So, but like we have the static result is a way of doing the unit tests with the connectors in Logic Apps. Sometimes it works, most of the times they don't work. Okay. Integration test is the one that we are going to do to actually validate the communication between the several pieces that I have in my system. So if I have a UI that consumes an API that calls a backend system, so I'm trying to validate this whole communication process. That's what I'm trying to do with integration tests, right? And I can test from the UI if that's something that I want to do, or I can just test from the API and the backend system if that's something that I want to do as well. For integration developers, architects, normally we just look from the integration side. So normally my door to the system in terms of the integration side of things is the API. So I'm going to start on the API. The API is going to do some other work to communicate with the backend systems. So that's what I'm trying to actually test. Okay. They are more expensive to run because I need to actually have a proper setup of the systems. So if I have, again, API that calls SAP, that calls database, and I'm expecting data to be there to be available for me to validate my scenario, I need to do a proper setup. So one of the first actions of my integration test is going to be insert the data in the database, make these records on SAP, and then I can actually execute my integration test. So that's why it's more expensive to run. And we have, I guess we can call a metrics of how much of tests my solutions is going to have. So I'll have like most of my tests going to be around unit tests. And I'm talking this about like normal software development with C#. But we are going to have like most of the tests going to be unit tests. Then we are going to have 10% with integration tests and much less of the other things because every time we go one level up, it's more expensive, it's more hard, it's more difficult to do the implementation of that particular test. Unit test is this one, and then we go with the other ones. The test is good. So I can open Visual Studio, I create my test project, I do like all the coding that I need to do to that particular test that I'm trying to do. But I don't want a person to open Visual Studio to do the execution of the test. So I want to automate as much as possible. So that's why I'm going to use CI/CD tools like Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, or whatever other tool you guys might have. So I'm trying to eliminate the human in the process. I want to check in the code, and when I do the checking of the code, I want to do the proper compilation, deployment, and execution of the tests. If everything is good at the end of the process, I just let the deployment happen in the environment that I want to. If something fails, send an email, send a notification, generate reports, or whatever you guys want to do. But my goal is to make the automation of that as much as possible. So now I'm gonna, so this is about, like, the first session was about just do a little bit of, I guess, concepts to talk about testing. Now I'm gonna go actually to the code. And to do this coding that I did, I took those two first links. The first one was a presentation made, I think, 2 years ago, more or less, by Michael Stephenson, if I'm not mistaken on his name. So that's the first one. The second one, it's a testing framework that was implemented by somebody else. So I took those two things to help design what I did. If you guys want to see the code, it's on my GitHub. It's the third link. You just go there and download and play a little bit with that as well. So those are the reference for you guys to use. So what I'm trying to do is, like, I have a logic app. I implemented a logic app. I'm executing that logic app. The logic app is make a communication with backend systems. What I want to do is call the logic app through this automation that I'm going to do. So I want to call the logic app. I want to, after I call the logic app, I want to go and check some actions inside the logic app. See, based on this scenario that I'm trying to test, do I have what I'm expecting to have on that particular action? So that's what I'm trying to do. Okay. Microsoft developed this package, Microsoft.azure.management.logic. The latest version is from 2018 and was developed, I think, with .NET Framework. So it's a little bit old. It says that it's possible to work with .NET Standard. I tried to work with .NET Core. For some reason, it didn't work. So I kind of, yeah, never mind. So all my code was developed on .NET Framework 4.7 because I guess this is not up to date. I also use for the authentication to be able to actually call the logic app. I'm working with this other package for security. And our manipulation of the JSON that I'm going to exchange with the logic app, I'm using system.text.json. Is going to work as well with the Newtonsoft if you guys want to do that. Maybe you just need to do a little bit adjustment on the serialization settings. Okay, so those are the main packages of my solution. So the first thing that I need to do is to do the authentication on Azure AD. So that's something that I need to have, like a credential that have access on the logic app. So I need to have this kind of credential. So what I did was I went to Azure AD, I created a service principal, I got the service principal, specified that the service principal have logic app's contributor role. So that gave that service principal like the permission to make an execution on the logic app. And once I have that in place, I just came here, specify, okay, I'm gonna use the this API from Microsoft to authenticate my credential. I need to specify the service principal ID. I need to specify the service principal secret, acquire the token, and then return the token credentials that is gonna be used on the next step. So I need to do the proper authentication in Azure AD. Once I have my credentials, so I have the token credentials here, I'm going to use this class. So from that package that I showed before, Logic Management Client. So that's the package that actually have access to the logic apps. So this class is able to look for all the workflows that I have in that this credential have access, right? So I'm able to see the triggers. I'm able to see the actions. I'm able to execute the triggers if I want to. So I can do like a lot of stuff using this class. So I'm specifying the subscription ID. The other thing that I'm doing here, I'm calling this large cap that is called my suffix. I think I have something here about Corinthians. I'm not sure, but what this large cap does is basically I'm trying to simulate like a API that is going to consume a backend system to enable me to buy tickets to watch Corinthians games. That's what this thing is doing, right? So I need to specify the research group, I need to specify the large caps, and I need to specify the name of the trigger. And you say, the name of the trigger? Yes. Whenever you create in large caps an HTTP resource, or by any means like anything of triggers, they have a name. So that's the name that I need to specify here. For HTTP, the default is manual. You can change if you want to, but the default is manual. Normally, we leave like that. And once I have the URL that came back from this operation, just open a HTTP client and execute your request. That's pretty much what you need to do. So in that way, you have a large cap. That large cap have an HTTP trigger, and you are executing that large cap passing the information you want to. OK, so I executed the large cap, and I need to check if the large cap is ready for me to go to see if the actions were executed properly or not. So when I execute the large cap, it comes back with, so I have this result back, and I have access to the headers, to the body, everything that came back from that request. One of them is the workflow run ID. So that ID is that particular ID of the execution that I did. And once I have that, I'm able to go to workflow runs, get a sync, pass my ID, and then I get the status. The status is going to come back with fail, succeeded, or cancel. So those are the three status that workflow can have. So based on that, I'm going to do my evaluation to see if I'm happy with that. And if I'm happy, I can go and call the actual actions that I want to evaluate. So my large cap have like many actions. I just want to look this one. This one in particular is an API call. So it's calling like another API. So I want to see what happened with that particular execution. And if I want to see the response of that particular action, I'm going to go and get this property, action outputs link URI, and then it's going to give me the body of the response of that action execution. Okay. Questions so far? Not in the room, online. We're good.
Any questions? Raise your hands.
If not,
tap on the chat.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, continue.
Yeah. So if you have questions, just raise your hand or call Wagner because he's listening. So the development that I did so far is considering HTTP triggers. It works really well for that. But I have a problem with triggers that are non-HTTP. So I'm not able. So I'm able with this package. I'm able to execute the trigger, but I'm not able to pass a body for non-HTTP triggers. At least I didn't find so far. For that, to a kind of a workaround for that would be to create like a second. So if you have a large cap, you are able to create like as many triggers as you want on the same large cap. But when you do that, there's a few drawbacks that I'm going to show a little bit later. Okay, but yeah, there's not a very good solution so far. Way of doing this was another way of doing this was going to always expose my large caps as HTTP and kind of put the connectors in a way of what you call in this talk was a pipeline. So have like separate logic apps that deals with connectors that are non-HTTP, but that makes your development much more, I guess, cumbersome. So you're doing more stuff than you actually need to do because the tool doesn't support you on having a proper way of injecting data into your execution. Okay, but anyway, I'll go back to that later. The other one thing, one thing that we can do is to work with the static preview. So let's say you have an action, and that action is going to call SAP, Dynamics, a database, whatever, right? So instead of letting the action to actually call the backend system, you can come here, enable the static preview, static results, sorry. You just enable this thing. It's going to give you these properties, status code, and somewhere we have the body available as well. So I can specify exactly in that execution that I want what I want to happen. The problem with that, it's a single static preview result. So let's say you have a logic app and you want to test a scenario of success and a scenario of failure with the same one. The static preview is just one. So it's not gonna, you're not going to be able to do that. You need to deploy like one version for the success, another version for the failure. And if you have like a 10 success and 10 failures you want to test, you need to do like all of this, which is why I mentioned, even though it's a good idea, it's not actually that useful. If I had somehow a way to inject what I want to test when I'm calling the logic app, was going to be beautiful. Imagine that like when I do this call here, one more. So when I do this call here and I'm able to inject what I'm trying to test for all the actions inside the logic app, was going to be beautiful. I'll have like everything that I need to do a proper unit testing of my logic app. But I don't have a way to do that so far. I sent a couple emails to a few people to see if that's going to be possible. I don't know. Keep asking. Okay, so that's the presentation side. Now I need to go to the demo, right? So if you guys don't know that symbol, I'm going to explain to you. That's the symbol of the best football team of the planet. Okay? So again, my demo is about, I have a website that wants to sell Corinthians games. And to be able to sell that, I need to consume a Corinthians API. That's basically what I want to do, okay? So I want to call this API, and because I'm doing this development and I want to make sure that my software is working as I intended, I need to do some integration tests to make sure all the communication is happening the way that I want to. And more than just like doing the testing in logic apps, I want to actually do the automation end-to-end, checking the code, make the execution of the test, and see what is the result on the logic apps, on the Azure DevOps, sorry. So let me go back here. I think I need to, yeah. I want to duplicate.
And while he's doing that, just to say there is no consensus of that idea that Corinthians is the best team in the world, okay? I had to open the microphone for that very important statement.
Okay, so let's start with the logic app. So I have this logic app. As you guys can see, it's the same name that I use like in the PowerPoint, LAPP by Corinthians.-dev. Basically, this logic app receives a HTTP request, and I have a schema defined here. One important thing to mention, I enable the schema validation. So if by any reason my request doesn't match, logic app is going to send 400 back. Okay. Yep. It needs to be post. I'm saying right away. So this is like a simulation of a long running process. So I receive the request, and I send a 202 right away saying, I got a request, but I'll be working on the background. Okay, so that's what I'm doing with my client. I'm doing some validations. I'm selling tickets just for Corinthians. I'm not selling tickets for anyone else. So if my request doesn't come and it's not related to Corinthians, so I have two properties there. One is called home team. The other one is called away team. So Corinthians is not in one of them. I'm rejecting the request and I'm logging that information in a blob store. No, this is table storage. If it is Corinthians, then I'm gonna call this other API. That's actually my backend API that communicates with the Corinthians websites somewhere, right? And then it's gonna actually make a reservation of the ticket for me. So I'm doing some mapping here to specify what I wanna pass. If I got a 200 back from the API, I just say, yep, that's a success. And if it fails, I'll have this other login here, and I'm going to terminate the logic cap. So I don't leave the logic cap as finished successfully. So I'm just marking as fail. Pretty much that's what this logic cap does. Very, very simple. So what I want to do you guys need me to bit
I think
bigger?
it should be zoom in it a little bit, mate. In here is, yeah,
Good.
that's better. Is okay for the guys on the chat or online? Can you just say it okay or put something in chat?
Yeah, looks good.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have one class. So basically, this I have my logic apps project here, and I have my test project for the logic apps here. So basically, this project is doing what I said before, .NET, .NET Framework 4.7.2 because of the package, and I have the management logic here, and the Active Directory package as well. So that's set. What I'm doing, let's go to the schema one. I'm gonna show this guy here just because it contains like all the logic, and then I'm gonna show my actual implement. So this is my implementation for the demo, my actual implementation in real life. I'm gonna show you later. So basically what I'm doing, I'm looking for these properties: tenant ID, client ID, secret, and subscription. I'm getting those from environment variables because these are secrets, pretty much. I don't want that thing in a configuration file whatsoever. So I want that to be as secure as possible. And I'm going to show also another reason for that is because the way I use on Azure DevOps. So that make my life much easier than it would have, being with configuration file. So once I have that information, I can do the proper authentication on Azure AD. And then I can create the management client, specify the subscription ID. I'm going to call that logic app, my resource group, that logic app manual. I'm going to get the URL. Once I have that, I'm going to call here. So you see here, I'm doing a little bit of serialization from the class to JSON. And once I have that set, I'm just making the call to logic app. I'm getting the response from logic app, and because I know this one is going to fail, yep, I'm using this definition. So and that's like another thing you need to. Hey, Craig is here. So one thing you whenever you start working with this, every action, every execution have their own JSON format. So you need to discover what is that to be able to implement a proper model, so you can do the serialization, I guess, easily. So that's what I did. I called the logic app on Postman, saw what was the response back, and based on that response back, I said, oh, I need a class called error, and I need two properties in there, code and message. And I'm getting the response. And if the code that I'm receiving back on that response is bad request, that's what I want to happen. If it's not, I'm logging why it's failing. And I'm doing the validation of the response from logic app. So I'm looking for trigger input mismatch, require properties are missing, and these names here. Because if you see my model, let me show you this model as well. So this is the actual thing that I'm waiting on the body of the logic app. Home team, away, customer, date, post to Twitter, and price. But I'm just setting price. And I marked, and let me show you another thing before we go any further. And I marked in my schema that customer name, date, home team, and away, they are required. So I need to pass those, otherwise the trigger is going to fail that for me. I'm going to do a breakpoint here. Simpler code. And let's execute this guy. Come on. Oh, by the way, let me switch a little bit here. So my latest execution was today, 9:50 a.m. So I'm creating my class. I'm serializing that, and I'm calling the logic app. So let's switch back. Come on. Oh, sorry. Of course, it's failing. I was just thinking that the demo failed right away. So as you can see here, I have a request 609, and it's saying that failed. So just return me the bad request that I was looking for. So I'm looking for the response. And if I go to the response, yep, I'm looking for bad request. And I'm looking for this guy here. So that's the information that came back from logic apps: trigger input mismatch, schema mismatch, and the information about the required properties that were not provided. And I can do like all the validation that I want to do, and that's it. Come on. So if I go to the test explorer, I have my tests now calling the logic apps, doing the proper validation of the schema, and then just showing like the result on the UI. So it's quite useful. You can do like a lot of tests for all the fields if you want to. So I have tests to require fields. I have tests for specific data types, booleans, numbers, for length of strings not matched. So all of these tests, they are in place. So if I just execute all of them now. So it's just everything is stopping on the trigger right here. So I did like a bunch of tests, very fast, very simple, in my logic app. But that's not the fun part. The fun part is whenever I want to go inside the logic app. So I have the same, I have like a kind of the same code, but I'm actually this time want to go and inspect what is the execution of each action, or at least some of the actions. And as you can see, my model, my code now is a little bit simpler, right? So I'm just providing the model, and I'm calling this bad request test base, which by its way, it's calling in a simpler way my code. I don't have to provide like every time all the things because I'm using base class. So my base class is actually the one responsible to do all the authentication process. I have some methods to enable me to get the response message whenever I want to. I just need to specify the model that I want this method to go and get. So I'm just trying to reuse the code as much as I can. I don't want to duplicate that code every single time. So let's go back here. So basically, what I'm saying here is like I'm providing this model. This is Corinthians, of course, my team. Palmeiras, that's the biggest rival from Corinthians. That's me as a customer, the date of the purchase, how much I'm gonna pay on the ticket, and I don't want to post on Twitter. I didn't do this implementation anyway, so even if I put through, nothing's gonna happen. So it's gonna do pretty much the same. What is different is from here. So if I go here, debug. So what is happening is like this information that I'm providing is passing through this the trigger, but it's gonna fail on the execution of the underlying API. So I'm getting the ID, and let's go to LogCap. So if I switch to run history, now I have the execution at 6 and 14. So this passed through the trigger and called the API, and the API failed. So that's the information that I provided. And because I'm trying to use Palmeiras, Palmeiras does not have a Clubs World Cup. So yeah, it's not going to work, right? So, and for those that are not Brazilians and didn't get the joke, that's something we say about Palmeiras. Palmeiras does not have a Clubs World Cup. And that's true. So what I'm doing is basically I'm gonna go to the workflow runs. I'm getting the status of that execution. Oops. And the status is failed. So if the status is succeeded or failed, it means the LogCap has finished, and that's what I'm looking for. And basically, because it's finished, I can go and look for one particular action. So let's go back here again. So this is the action that I'm looking for by ticket. So I want to get the data from that execution. And I'm looking that I got back from that execution 404. So that's what I'm looking for. That's true. And I'm getting the content. And I want to check that the response that came back from that execution is 404 plus with a body that says that Palmeiras does not have a Clubs World Cup. Okay? It's saying Portuguese, but it's the same thing. Every single language is the same. Does not have. So I can assert. Yeah, that's gonna pretty much finish my execution. So now, instead of just stopping on the trigger, I'm going all the way to inside the LogCaps to validate the action. I did the evaluation of one action. You can do as many evaluations as, of course, you want to do. So maybe another thing to test was because this one failed, I'm expecting to have because this failed, I'm expecting to have this one executed. So maybe another evaluation I need to do is to go and check, okay, I have this thing properly happening successfully, yes or no. So it's just about like whatever you want to test on your process. And one last test. So I did one test for success end-to-end. Not this one, this one. So I'm doing one that is going to succeed all the way down. So I'm specifying Corinthians, I'm specifying Chelsea, and I'm specifying a specific date, 2012, 16th of December. That's when Corinthians play against Chelsea in the Clubs World Cup and won the Clubs World Cup. So that's why this date's here, and that's why the request is going to succeed. Okay. If I make the call on this one, it's going to go through the same process. It's just like the validation that I'm doing now is a little bit different. I'm still calling, I'm checking the status of the workflow, and then I'm going to go to the action that I want to call by ticket. And this time I'm expecting OK. Yes, it's working fine. I'm checking the response, and the response needs to have Vi Corinthians. Let's see if that's true. So if I go here to this execution, and the response from this guy is Vi Corinthians. Yep, it's gonna pass. And this time I'm checking another action, log by ticket success, and I'm looking if it's created. So the record was also created on the storage. So everything is working fine. Okay. So I did the kind of integration test for the schema. I did the execution of integration test for failure. I did the execution of integration test for success. So I'm able to actually inspect all the execution of the logic apps using this logic. What is there? Yeah, somewhere here, logic management client class have access. And like what this class uses on the background is this. Logic, no. I had this open before. Close APIs, I think. I'm going to. This one. So this is the thing that uses under the hood. It's the same same REST APIs. You can use the APIs if you want to, but the class is just like a little bit easier. Cool. No questions so far? No. Okay.
Yeah. So no questions, but well, actually, the only question that I had is if this implementation is on GitHub somewhere, because
Yep.
people thought that was like quite cool. Would like to take a quick look.
So you can go here to the third link. So that's my implementation.
Do you mind grabbing that and put it on the chat?
And it's there.
There we go, in capital letters.
So yeah, just go and grab. I try to do a little bit of reuse of the code to make sure it's. So those two operations that I did, this good request success, and the other one that I did, I think was here, is the one that like shows like step by step. If you want to see the proper way that I implemented, it's right here. So that's like a very much shorter version because everything else is on the base class. Okay. So to make my life easier, so I don't have to do that much code every single test. The last thing that I want to show, so this is all good. So I have Visual Studio, it's working fine. I can open Visual Studio, I can execute the tests, but I want to have that working in Azure DevOps. And to have that work in Azure DevOps, I created a pipeline in YAML, which is better, right, than the classic one. So basically what I'm doing here is, first, I have a key vault for the secrets. I don't want that information in, as I mentioned before, in a configuration file. So I have key vault. I added in key vault the client ID and the client secret. And once I have that done, I create a variable. And that variable is an environment variable for Azure DevOps. So whatever I did in the code is working just fine here. That's the beauty of this configuration. I don't need to think like some other way to get in that value. I'm just work the same way. Okay. And the other thing that I did, because this is not secret, so at least I don't consider secret, I just specify in the pipeline the tenant ID and the subscription ID. So those variables, they are going to work just fine with my code. Then I'm deploying the logic caps. So logic caps, this implementation that I did, I use the consumption model. So I need to deploy in Azure for this to be able to be tested. So I'm doing the actual deployment in a location. And that location is defined by this guy here. So if you guys never used this before, this is a service connection. I think that's the name in Azure DevOps, which is a service principal. So this guy here, I had to go, let me show this, how we are in terms of time. Okay. So basically, I'm here on my Azure DevOps. I had to go here to service connections, and I created this guy, service connection DevOps. So when I do this specification, open like a blade, I specify subscription, I specify the resource group, and then it creates a service principal for you. There's just one thing that I normally like to do, because I don't like the way it does by itself. So I specify the name Service Connection DevOps in Azure DevOps. When I go to here, you see Service Connection DevOps here because I changed that. Normally it's something else. Like I think it's uses the project and resource group and some other stuff. And if you have like a lot kind of similar, it makes really hard to find. So I just go here, change the name, it works just fine. Okay. And this guy, if I go to here, access control. So the service connection DevOps have contributor access. So that's what I need to do the proper deployment. Let's go back. So that's about deploying the logic caps. And once I have the logic caps, now I need to look into my test project. So because I'm using NuGet packages, I need to do a restore of the packages, which Craig helped me the other day because I was suffering a lot with this. I think I spent, I don't know, 2-3 hours. It wasn't working because something in the configuration. And I called this guy, said, what's going on? And he opened the solution file, I think. He said, oh, the locations. Fuck. But it was good because he solved my problem in 5 minutes. Quite awesome. Thank you for that. Build the project and execute the test. So let's do one thing here. I'm gonna change something here. One thing that I'm not gonna break anything. So where's my buy? What? Just something here, just to trigger the execution. So my pipeline, as I'm going to show you guys now. So I have this pipeline here. As you can see, I did a few tests to make sure it's working fine. Git change for ACSUG demo. Commit, push. I'm pushing directly on main. Don't do that. Don't push to me. Don't push to me. You need to do a pull request. You know the drill. But anyway, come on. Yay. So now I have the pipe. Oh, go back. Come on. So now I have this in the queue. It's going to be executed. Yep. Some way it's going to do all the process. It's going to do the checkout of the code. It's going to deploy the logic apps, and then it's going to execute all the tests that I have in place. I think one of them is going to fail because I was trying to do something else today, and I forgot to delete. So the execution is coming back, but the first execution, so the execution of the logic apps just returns a 202. Yeah, and then in the header returns the run ID of that logic app. With that information, I can query more stuff. Now it's going, yeah, did the deployment for the logic apps. We can check that to make sure I have that in place. I think it's here. Yep, test 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we can go where this is. Build test, execute test. I think one of them is going to fail because I was trying to do something else today.
You're not mocking the backend API. That didn't exist. But you use something like that to mock it up.
Yep. I can use the API management. I can use Postman or any other mocking tool out there. So that's going to work fine for API calls. The problem is with everything else. So if I'm calling Dynamics, for example, how I'm going to mock that. So that's the problem. Static result was, I guess, going to be able to solve that, but because it's just one, and I need to deploy, I need to change that in deployment time. That's not useful. If I had a way to call, let's say I have an API that I can call into the logic app and change that in the fly without having to deploy the logic apps again, was going to be beautiful. Yep. Yeah, I think it's gonna work. Yeah. Yeah. No, you mean the code, right?
No,
Oh, okay. So that's gonna call every time or just once in a while?
Just when your pipeline runs.
Oh, okay, but it still calls.
So if you go to the library, create a new variable group.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I oh.
Not enough yet, not used enough. Because you can then, that also then gives you the ability to, the service connection can actually have a checkpoint on it. So you can have an approval date on use of that service connection. Which can, not for testing, but it's good for production.
Oh, cool. No, that's okay. No, I haven't done that yet, so. So that's the execution of my pipeline. And we have a test tab now which have all the tests that I did, and all of them succeeded. It's working fine. Now that I see that this is working fine, I can get the report and I can make some decisions. Okay, it's working in dev or in my build resource group. So now I can deploy to dev. Now I can deploy to UAT. Now I can deploy to production. And I can work like with gates and all these other features from Azure DevOps to help me out with that. Okay. I was going to mention a few other things. Yeah, so yeah, about the execution of my backend system, as you mentioned, if I have HTTP, I can use any mocking capability with API management, with Postman or whatever else. And then in that tool, I can specify whatever response I want to back without having to call a backend system. For connectors, then we can get creative, right? So I could create like a if I pass a proper request in the initial request, I pass, oh, this is a test one, and based on that, I can do a if, but it's not pretty, I'd say. Or I can completely split out the connector from the main logic app. So I have like a main logic app that does all this stuff, but only communicates with connectors through HTTP in other logic apps. But then you are going to have like if you have, for example, 5 connectors and you are calling like five other systems, you would have to have like one main logic app plus 5 others. Then you start to have like a bunch of we can say for the stock people, pipeline logic apps, which maybe is not the best thing. So anyway. I don't think we have a solution for that yet. I sent a few requests to Rebecca. I don't know if you know her, from the Logic Apps product team. I sent to John Fancy and a few other guys. Let's see if something happens, but I don't know. Well, right now, this works fine. Oh, one thing that I want to show before we finish this up. I was trying to play a little bit. So let's say, so I just used the logic cap, the HTTP trigger, right? But let's say that I have other trigger. So basically, these logic caps is a logic caps that have, I think it's a blob storage that I did, and then I did something else just to show. And what I did on top of that was to have another trigger. So if you don't know, I have the capability in logic apps to have one trigger as HTTP, another trigger as FTP, another trigger as, you can have multiple triggers on the same logic apps. But if you do that, you don't have access anymore to the visual designer. That's gone. And you don't even have access to the code view here. So you need to store that outside. So it's some way. More than that, you don't have even access to the monitoring side of things, visual, I mean. So if you go to the run details, you can see all this stuff. Oh, I have I have all these actions that happen, and I have the output links. You know, you kind of you can see stuff, not in the visual way we are used to. So it's kind of possible to have multiple triggers. So maybe you have like you have your real trigger that is dynamics, and then you have like a HTTP one that you can call. But if you do that, that happens. Trade-offs, right? Cool. I think that's that. If no one have any questions, I think I'm done.
Let's see. Any questions from the people online? Can either raise your hand or type it on the chat. No. Okay. Akshay is typing. Just a minute. In the meantime, any questions from the live audience?
What is that?
So, Akshay, when you say new logic apps, you're talking about the logic apps standard, right? The logic apps preview. Yeah, it's similar, right? But in the end, it's still a logic app, even if it's running on-prem. It's still a logic app, and you still don't have the same level of access to each one of the actions and stuff like that. So what do you think, Alessandro?
I think it's the same. It's not going to change much.
Yeah. It wouldn't change much, right?
Maybe I can do a little bit more in terms of maps. Now that we have access to maps, schemas, maybe I can, test those things better. But the actual thing that it's bothering us right now, which is the connectors, I don't see a solution yet.
Yeah, the main issue that I see is that you can test the logic of the workflow, but you need live components in order to do that. So you only do integration test, as you said, instead of unit test.
Yep.
Until they come back in a way to actually mock connectors at runtime, then you're not going to have a much about that, or at least to decouple the static results definition from the logic apps.
No,
because then you can swap the static results definition.
If they decouple the static result, we have a solution. That's it. Static result does what I want to do. I just need to be able to provide that at runtime. That's it. If I have this ability, I think the solution is there. Right?
Yeah. So it is a step on the right direction. It's just not fleshed out enough. And I think it's from the backlog point of view, so much effort on actually bringing it on-prem first, and then all of the other things are kind of in the back burner for a while.
Yeah. No, I think like for us, those features that we want, what we can do is send to Microsoft, keep asking. You are the Microsoft.
Actually, better than that, put it on user voice and spam it on Twitter to get like a 3,550 user voice request. Then all of a sudden you're going to have a lot more weight when you're talking to Microsoft.
That's true.
All right. Yeah, so
I think like if you are working on a project that have a good number of logic apps, and you can propose like one solution for everything, I think it works well. But like if you go to one place that have like 2, 3 logic apps, I'm gonna say to them, I need a event grid, and I need a service bus, and I need this and that for doing logic apps to try to solve this problem. So
there's a good question here from Akshay. Is asking if the Logic Apps REST API can be accessible from integration service environment. Right? I've never tried that as isolated on VNet. I have no idea.
I guess so. I don't know. Never tried.
Yeah. No, well, the thing is the Logic Apps REST API is a public resource that acts as a run ID from the consumption model from the past, right? And then your execution is restricted inside the ICE. So I'm assuming no, but if there was any time a Logic Apps had a certification, that would be probably a certification question. So I would assume no until we can try. But the problem is you're still calling like the Logic Apps management APIs, which is a public resource. So I don't think that same resource is deployed together with ICE, right? Because it's from the fabric of Azure. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Sounds like a good follow-up
Ah,
And spending $5,000 on ICE to test that, mate.
that's all right. I should have the MVP one. So
Yes. Mhm. That's what the Azure subscription credits are for.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, so if there's no more questions, so thank you very much. So that's the first hybrid, I guess, for real. I think it worked really well. So I'm looking forward to see like more of you guys here, the next sessions that we are going to do this model. So I think the next one is going to be just online because our presenters from Wellington. But after that, we are going to try to go back, I guess, to this model. Looking forward to see more people joining us and eating pizza, Coke, everything else.
And on the other hand, for the people that is online, continue coming.
Yep.
Right. You are winning from the in-person audience for so far. Let's keep that happening because it's really good to see people outside Auckland joining us as well. So thanks everyone. Hopefully that everyone that enjoyed the session as much as we did putting it together, especially trying the hybrid event. And see you next month.
For all of us.
Actual clapping sound. Come on, everyone claps virtually as well.
Yeah.
And thank you. I'll just stop the recording now.